On this edition of News Conference, Governor Gavin Newsom sprinting toward Election Day on behalf of his priority ballot issue, Proposition 1, a $6.4 billion bond issue to build mental health treatment facilities for those suffering from critical mental illness and substance abuse. What distinguishes this effort from others that so many believe have not delivered what was promised? His reaction to polls indicating President Joe Biden is losing to Donald Trump, not just in battleground states, but nationally. The split in the Democratic Party over the Israeli-Hamas conflict, and the governor responds to the Panera controversy, criticism over an exemption to a new state law increasing the minimum wage of fast food workers of major chains, a so-called carve-out which appeared to benefit a campaign donor who owns 24 Panera Bread restaurants in California.
News Conference with Conan Nolan. Newsmakers, issues, impact. Your local political source for over 50 years and the longest running broadcast in Southern California. Your host, Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to the Tom Brokaw News Center here at Universal Studios. Hope you're having a great Sunday. It is part of the geometry of ballot measures that they need to start out with a large lead in the polls because their popularity normally goes south from there. That appears to be the case with Proposition 1 on the March 5th ballot, the $6.4 billion bond measure to build mental health facilities for the severely mentally ill. The most recent poll by UC Berkeley's Center for Governmental Studies indicates what was once a commanding lead has now dwindled, and passage is far from certain. We talked with Governor Gavin Newsom about his effort to pull the measure across the finish line following a Yes on Prop 1 rally yesterday in San Fernando.
Based on the Berkeley poll, Proposition 1 is now a toss-up. And one wonders, and we're starting to see some evidence of this, that there are voters who are taking a second look at this measure and saying, listen, we've been down this road before. In 2018, there's Proposition 2, $2 billion, promised 20,000 beds for the mentally ill. A fraction of that have been produced. Here in LA, we had Measure HHH, which promised 10,000 beds, units, housing units. A fraction have been produced. City audits said a few at a cost of $700,000. So dissuade us of the fact that policymakers have overpromised in the past, and as a result, you have a credibility issue on this.
Well, I don't know that we do. I think we've proven that we can get things done when we're open argument and interested evidence. Let me give you an example. Proposition 1 is actually a reform of the Mental Health Services Act that incorporates those points of concern and critique. It didn't incorporate 20 years ago housing, didn't incorporate substance abuse, requires now simple one plan for every county, has progress reports that are required of the state, audits that are required, so there's more stress testing, more accountability. As it relates to the $6.38 billion bond, the reason it's $6.38 billion is we did a deep dive of needs, but we included in it permitting reform and streamlining reform so we actually can deliver on the promise, and let me build on that. We did something called Project Home Key in the state of California. We just announced 15,000 new permanent units in just 3.5 years in the state. But here's the big idea. That works because we were able to get it down to $203,000 per key of state money. You haven't run many headlines, $200,000, mostly $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, particularly down here in LA, because of the siting and permitting reform and because of the unique language that backs that up. This builds on Home Key. Of that $6.38 billion, $2 billion extends that program. So it's completely different is the point. It's not a tax increase. It comes not from your property taxes, but from the general fund, so it's a different thing altogether.
So up until now, getting someone off the street for substance abuse or even the severely mentally ill is voluntary. Does this change that in any way?
No, this is all aligned with the other reforms. Care Court, which just 8 counties are now in, all 58 will be in by the end of the year.
Where there can be involuntary admission.
Well, on the back end, it's not substituted care, it's supported care, but we did also conservatorship reform. It just went into effect. Many counties are opting in. Everyone will have to opt in a year or so, but counties are already opting in. So we did the conservatorship form. We've created this new pathway in Care Court. We're reimagining our entire Medi-Cal system through CalAIM. It's a 5-year, $11 billion strategy, which is the most significant reforms in Medi-Cal or Medicaid in U.S. history. You tie all of these things together with more accountability, more oversight than we ever have, an acknowledgement that we need to reform the existing system and now provide the most essential part, which is housing. But again, with the streamlining reforms, this is a game changer.
You have critics who say, listen, this is also too expensive. You have a $73 billion budget deficit, according to the legislative analyst. Recently, I know that you disagree with the numbers. but right, this is the independent, independent, but still, you do have a deficit, and it's large. Whether it's $73 billion or $38 billion or $48 billion, it's a concern.
Well, we had $177 billion operating surplus over 2 of the last 4 years as well. So
right. Why, by the way, why couldn't the money for Prop 1 come from that $100 billion?
Well, we put unprecedented. We put $54 billion into climate. We put unprecedented money into our water and sewer systems, stormwater capture. We put unprecedented capital. 93% of the last budget surplus, 93% went for one-time capital purposes, and those capital dollars included many of the priorities in the state.
Regarding the deficit, Robert Rivas, the Assembly Speaker, has not ruled out tax hikes.
I have. He may not have, and it's not that's not a confrontational framework. I put out, and this is why I say this, I'm not asserting, I'm laying out, I laid out a detailed plan to balance the budget that did not include tax increases. There's a volatility that is the nature of our tax system, well defined, but this bond does something we haven't done in 50 years. It fulfills the commitment that was made, a bipartisan commitment in the 60s that was never realized, to provide step-down facilities and community-based care for the behavioral health needs in the state. We're doing it at a scale, 11,150 new beds and 26,700 new slots for behavioral health.
Last week on Meet the Press, Governor Newsom told Kristen Welker that as far as he's concerned, President Joe Biden's age at 81 is an advantage in his race for a second term. Every survey indicates most people do not believe that. Talk about that when we return with Governor Gavin Newsom.